Hello and good morning, Pat Flynn here. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to be talking about naming things, not naming people or babies, although I remember what it was like to, and no, actually, in fact, that's not a true story. It was really easy for us because it was whatever April wanted. So we have these really beautiful names for our kids. But when it comes to products and services and our brand names and our podcasts and our YouTube channel and all these other things that we have to make decisions for, naming things can be quite difficult. It feels like a very heavy decision, and rightfully so, because what we name the thing becomes the thing. It becomes what we imagine people talking about and sharing. It becomes the logo. It becomes the colors and what the website looks like and how we talk about what we talk about and the things that we say all the time. And it is a serious decision, but at the same time, I know that a lot of us use, well, I don't know what a good name might be as an excuse because we're scared. And this is very common, especially because, I teach people how to start their podcasts. And I'll tell you, the number one biggest excuse that people have is either they just are scared of the technology or they haven't found a name for their show yet. Now, are we going to let that stuff stop us from actually helping people, from putting our thing out into the world? I hope not. So let's talk about it today. Today, make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already. Again, my name is Pat Flynn, here to help you make more money, save more time, and help more people too. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some strategies. I'm going to tell you some stories about how I've named a few things and how I've helped other people name a few things too. And then we're going to perhaps brainstorm. Maybe you have, if you're here live in the chat. This is the benefit of coming in live every day. Day 195, in fact, which is just like, that's just insane. Maybe we can help some of you who are here live. So put your thinking caps on. We're going to work together. But anyway, let's get started with the show. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you.
This is the income stream to help you achieve your dream, all while we keep it clean. This is the income stream. It's the kind of show where you can come and go, but then you leave inspired with no fee required. The income stream with Pat Flynn.
Let's see, who do we got in the house today live with us? We got Karma Cashflow. What's up, Karma? Good to see you. Lisa in the house. We got GTO saying hello to Stephanie. Love that. We got Save Like a Bear, 5 days to go. Indeed. That is until episode 200, which is going to be on Sunday. It's going to start in the morning at likely 8 a.m. Pacific, and it's going to go for 2 hours, 2 hour special. We have some special guests coming on. We're going to play some games too, and we're going to have some fun, do some giveaways. We're going to recap some of the past 100 episodes, because the last time we had a 2 hour special was in our 100th episode, which was really fun. What's up, Manos? Great to see you here. Farvin, great to see you here as well. The Postpreneur, bang that thumbs up. Thank you all for that. I appreciate you. The MBA man, no fee required. Thank you for singing along, GTO. I see that every time in all caps. You're singing along. So anyway, thanks again for being here today. I appreciate you. We're talking about naming things. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick story about the SwitchPod to start off with. The SwitchPod was not the first name that we came up with for our special tripod. If you don't know what the SwitchPod is, oh God, what if I fell down? That would be pretty crazy. So the SwitchPod is this apparatus here that took about 1.5 years to prototype and create. We put it out there in February of 2019, and by we, I mean my partner and I, Caleb. And it wasn't in the very beginning that we had a name in mind. In fact, that's where a lot of people start. They go, ooh, I have this idea. What should the name be? But that's not where we started. That's sort of the first lesson there. Sometimes you have to create the product or solution first, and the name can come out of that. Sometimes you have to maybe come up with an episode of a podcast before you even name it. And that way you actually can get your hands dirty a little bit and understand perhaps a little bit more about what this is about. You may not know exactly what this thing is going to become until you actually do the thing. So we created a number of prototypes for this thing, and initially, because of the shape of it, we ended up starting with the name the Tomahawk. So the Tomahawk Tripod. Tomahawk Tripod. It kind of has a nice ring to it, but then we started thinking a little bit, and we're like, okay, I don't know if we necessarily want to name this a weapon, and this thing actually does have that sort of feel because it's very sturdy, and you could potentially do something with that, and plus that, we don't want to take advantage of anything sort of cultural appropriation or anything like that. So we took that out of the thing, and then we went with the Zoomerang, because this thing, which you could put your camera on, zoom, and it kind of flips back and forth, sort of like a boomerang, but it's fast. And it's like, okay, Zoomerang. And that was actually what it was going to be for a while. That was a front runner until one of us, I can't remember who, but Caleb and I just started to go, okay, well, what's something maybe a little bit easier that in fact describes the product a little bit. It is a tripod, so we'll see how we might be able to put pod into it, similar to how other products out there are like that too for this target market. We wanted to speak to the target market, so the idea of like a pod, right, like tripod, gorilla pod, etc., made sense. But then we're like, okay, well, what is this actually doing? It's switching between tripod mode and vlogger mode in a snap, and that's kind of the benefit, the fact that you could switch that really quick. It wasn't the fact that it could wrap around trees or anything like that, which I love the name Gorilla Pod. I think that's great. Having an animal as sort of a brand is kind of cool, but we decided to just call it Switch Pod. And fun fact, we actually got this logo design on 99 Designs. We found a specific designer there whose style we liked, and we worked with them, and there was a number of different logos that came up. In fact, logos is a whole nother income stream. We could talk about logos, but there was like a butterfly and this idea of changing, metamorphosis, switching from caterpillar to like the butterfly kept coming up, and I was like, I don't know if that best represents our brand. But anyway, SwitchPod came about, and this idea of the S and the P sort of connected, and it actually kind of looks like a tripod. That just stuck, and we liked the yellow branding. And anyway, that worked for us. So that was the story behind SwitchPod. And then of course that just, when the product came out and when we start sharing it, it became what it is today, which is really cool. We now have placed our third order of inventory for the holidays coming up, and we're hoping for a big holiday push. We'll see what happens. Another story that I have related to a book title. Book titles are really important too. So this book, Will It Fly? You might be surprised to know that the name didn't come until after the first draft. I did not have a name for Will It Fly until after the first draft. Again, another case in point of, okay, well, let's do the thing first. Let's create the sort of at least bare bones prototype of this thing. In this case, a book. In the other case, an actual physical prototype. And then maybe we can find a name. And I was having such a problem landing with a name because I didn't want it to be like a how to start a business. That's kind of the tagline, right? In fact, I had the tagline of the book before I actually had the title. The tagline to this was how to test your next business idea so you don't waste your time and money. And I remember specifically, very vividly, in fact, when this name came about, and it actually didn't come from me. It came from one of my fellow mastermind friends, Roderick Russell, who is in fact a hypnotist and sword swallower who was in one of my mastermind groups for a while. In fact, I've gotten so much value from him. You might be wondering, what kind of value could a hypnotist and a sword swallower offer somebody like you who's an online entrepreneur? Well, when I started speaking on stages, you can imagine how useful Roderick's information was about how to engage an audience and how to perhaps add a little bit of comedy or humor into a presentation, all that sort of stuff. So that was massively helpful. But he was the one that came up with the name because it was an hour-long hot seat. I was in it. We were just brainstorming names the whole time. That's another tip for you. So tip number one was, let's not try to start with the name. Sometimes the name just comes, right? And then we have to do some research. I'll talk a little bit more about how we do that research to make sure we're not sort of like overstepping on somebody. But number one, don't always start with trying to figure out the name of your thing first. The name of your business, your brand, your podcast, your book, whatever the case may be. You don't have to nail it before you start the work. Start the work, right? Then you're going to be forced to actually get motivated to actually pick a good name. And now you have something real or tangible or a prototype that encompasses that name, that whatever the name becomes, or you can come up with different versions and see, does that fit, right? Sort of like when you get a new puppy, you're like, okay, how about Snowball? No, that doesn't work because it's actually brown. What about Spike? No, it doesn't look very mean though. So, and then you can, because you have the dog in mind already, right? Versus coming up with a name and then going and getting the dog. It might not be a good fit. So lesson number 2 here is to get outside feedback, help, options. When you're brainstorming name ideas, all names are on the table, should be on the table. Potentially great ideas, not so great ideas. They need to actually just all be out there, because sometimes a lot of these potential names stick in our head that are actually not so great. We need to get them out of our brain so we can have more brain space to come up with potentially other ideas. But working with other people 2 brains is better than 1. 3 brains is better than 2, etc. So when you can get in front of a group of people and focus on, okay, what should the name of this thing be? After we know who it's for and what it's about, etc., we can just brainstorm all kinds of different names. Again, good and bad, lay them all out on the table. Again, this is another example of me using Post-it notes, and I do this all the time. In fact, we did this recently with our upcoming webinar course that we're going to be coming out with, and this is something that we brainstorm together as a team. And it wasn't my idea that we ended up on, because I only have so many ideas. Other people can potentially come from a different angle. So brainstorm, even with family, friends, even your kids, just like, hey, what would you call a book that talks about blank? And just see what ideas pop up. So I remember, because this mastermind call was literally an hour long, the name came with the final minute left before we were all going to hang up. It just came. So the idea of like, well, I don't know if it's going to work or not. And then Roderick was like, yeah, it's like kind of like when you're throwing something and you're just like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if it's going to fly or not. Like, imagine people building planes, and like, you know, back in the day when they were coming up with all those different plane ideas, there was one that was like a spiral thing on a bike, and there was one with like 20 wings on the side, like in black and white, just kind of people experimenting. And it's like, oh, will it fly? I don't know. Let's see. We have to test it, which is what the whole book is about. And I was like, will it fly? Oh my gosh, it's so perfect. And that's where some of the ideas came about for the introduction of this book. The introduction of this book encompassed a story now that I remembered only after that name came through, and then started to tie everything together, right? That's when I brought in the airport test from Jay Papasan, who I learned that from. And that's where all things started to come together later, right? Which was pretty cool. Paflin, do you suggest to have a name focus on what it will do for the customer rather than what it is? This is a great question from Grandma Goody. There are many different ways to come up with an idea. It could literally be a random thing. And as we all know, random things still become known for whatever it is, right? So Google, right? Like, most of us didn't know what Google meant back. I remember my dad would come home from work and he would talk about Google because he worked for the government. He had early access to these kinds of things and was like, yeah, it's like a database of things you could search for. And I was like, well, what is a Google really? And a Google is the number 1 followed by 100 zeros. And of course, that in a way represents what Google was eventually going to try and become, which was sort of the internet's database and the hundreds of millions and trillions and Googles of things that would potentially be sort of added onto this database and index. But for most of us, we didn't know what that meant, but it just took on a life of its own. Other names of podcasts, for example, they're sort of just random, right? Reply all. Okay, well, I don't know what that necessarily means. But then you start listening to the show, and it's like, oh, okay. Or, you could look up names of books. You could look up names of podcasts. You could look up names of brands. And you'll eventually get to the point where you're like, oh, well, that's what it's about, because the tagline, because when you go there, then it starts to make sense. So the name just becomes the identifier. It's so important to name things, though, especially if you're in the middle of working something. I would at least have, and this is why we have what's called project names. So we have project names for things before we find and land on the actual name. So, for example, Tesla right now, they're working on battery production, and they have a plant to produce their brand new batteries. I think they're 4880 batteries. I don't know. I don't remember the exact specifications, but they named that project Project Roadrunner. And even though that's not the actual name of the batteries, the name of the project becomes something that people can now share, talk about within the team. So even within your own team, having a name for something, even if it's a temporary name, can be a very smart decision, because when you name something, it becomes real. It becomes an actual thing. It has some substance to it. So naming things even before it's the final name could be really key, right? So that's really important. But to Grandma Goody's question here again, should it actually encompass what it does? It can, but it also has to do a lot with your gut and your feel and your style. And also, we're, again, going to talk a little bit later about, well, How do we make sure we don't overlap with somebody else's idea? There's a lot of gray area here as well. I'm not an attorney or a lawyer, by the way, so just take this as just, okay, this is Pat's opinion. I'll do with it what I like. But, there are some cases where the name has a lot to do with what people can expect when they get there. For example, Smart Passive Income. When I chose Smart Passive Income, that again was not the first name of it. The first name that I had was, and this is I don't know if I want to share this. Yeah, I'm going to share it. I think I've shared it before anyway. But with smartpassiveincome.com, this was in September of 2008. I had this idea after successfully launching my ebook business and making money there, helping people pass an architectural exam. I had the idea, this was early October, to build a website to help people learn how to do what I was doing. And I just wanted to share everything. So initially, the idea came from an acronym, PAID, PAID, Passive Aggressive Income Dude. That was what Smart Passive Income was initially called, Passive Aggressive Income Dude. And I, in fact, commissioned somebody. I paid them, I think, $100 to sketch out a drawing of a superhero with on his chest a $sign, and this was the Passive Aggressive Income Dude. And it was just like, looking back, I'm like, is that who I want to be known for? Is this what I want? And can imagine people calling me moving forward. Oh yeah, Pat Flynn, that Passive Aggressive Income Dude. And I was like, I don't know if I want people to call me passive aggressive. I'm not that. I am more of somebody who tries to approach things in a smart way, and I want to show people how to do it. Oh, smart passive income. Passive income was important to include in the domain name for, number one, keywords. I wanted the keywords in there specifically. And number two, the reason why I focused on passive income, obviously I could have made it related to making money online or a second career or side hustle, and like all those keywords worked. But passive income in particular talks about the ultimate end game with relation to building an online business. I knew that building an online business and getting passive income was hard work. And in fact, it needs to start very active and then transition to passive when you hire other people or you put systems in place, etc. So I wanted to get in front of all the people who were also targeting with keywords like passive income so that I can get in front and tell them the right way to do it. And that's where Smart Passive Income came from. It also has a little bit to do with creating SMART goals, although I haven't really leaned into that much. Specific, measurable, all those kinds of things, attainable, whatever the acronym SMART is for goals, that kind of had to do with it as well. So that's kind of a little bit of the story about Smart Passive Income. But no, your name does not have to have that. But more important than the name of the thing, the name, I think, is something you definitely should be happy with or satisfied with. And you may not be happy with it right away. But when it comes to the tagline of whatever it is that you're offering, that's more important in my opinion. The name is just a statement or a piece to remember, but the tagline is selling the thing. The tagline is what we're actually offering, especially for an online course. David Slightman Gartland taught me that the name of the online course honestly could be anything. It's really the tagline that is selling the course, right? So I have a name, here are the names of my courses, right? Power Up Podcasting. Right? So Power Up Podcasting, because I want to power up your business, and it's about podcasting. And it has some nice things within it as well. Alliteration, P and P, right? That's an interesting thing to do. Rhyming is also something that we could potentially do as well. But this is why names like PayPal are really great. They're just short and sweet, but they have that alliteration, which goes well. DoorDash, right? So alliteration is good. I've tried to do that a few times. Power Up Podcasting. And then my second level course, I thought, okay, well, if initially we're helping to power up their businesses and to power on their podcast, well, let's kind of amplify that now. So Amped Up Podcasting. The word AMP is in fact an acronym for automation, marketing, and then profiting. So this is the structure of the course, Amped Up Podcasting, which is my 201 level course. The name of your thing could also share how easy it is to do something, right? There's a lot of things like, I remember there was a man named Sean Noonan who created a course about how to speak, what language was it? I think it was Taiwanese, Cantonese, or I can't remember the specific language, but it was, just imagine it's Cantonese. Cantonese made easy, right? Online marketing made easy, something made easy or made simple or made quick. The benefit of that is within the name. It's the thing, but also it's made easy or made quickly, right? So there's a lot of instances like that. In fact, Online Marketing Made Easy podcast, is that Amy Porterfield's Online Marketing Made Easy? So that's how she named her thing. She got the keywords in there, online marketing, but made easy, right? I have a course called 123 Affiliate Marketing because I wanted it to be 3 simple steps. Number 1, find your focus product. Number 2, create passive opportunities for your product to be sold and recommended. And then number 3, create active campaigns to actually promote this focus product. So 1, 2, 3, right? So that was pretty cool because it includes or a little bit of, and of course, you see 123 affiliate marketing, you're like, okay, what does the 123 mean? Well, of course, in the tagline, it explains it. Another course that I have, Email Marketing Magic. Well, what the heck does that actually mean? Well, it's the tagline, right? It's this idea of growing your list, learning what to send your list, and then profiting, and then automating, right? So grow your list, make more money, automate. And the automation part is the magical part about that. So that's sort of where that name came in. And honestly, those names were just, okay, what sounds better? What sounds cool? And then the tagline will focus on actually copywriting what it is that this thing actually does for people, right? With our webinar course that's coming up, we have landed on A to Z webinars because webinars are a very, very technical thing. There's a lot of pieces to it, so we wanted to make sure we shared all the bits and pieces for you, from how to land on your topic, to how to get registrations, to setting up your software, your equipment, your videos, etc., and then even follow-up processes, evergreen webinars to grow your list, to potentially make more money or even make affiliate sales, etc. So all things marketing. It could have been called all things webinars, or it could be we just called it A to Z webinars because A to Z signifies sort of like the whole thing, right? Cool. But of course, if you are a personal brand, obviously you can use and potentially should use your name. But we also have to be forward thinking about this because 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, we have to go and play this game. Okay, let's take the DeLorean. Do we want to be known for what it is that we're talking about within this space? Is it okay that whatever it is that we're focusing on now continues to, in fact, be a part of our name? This is something that I know Chris Ducker struggled with a little bit because Chris Ducker for a while was very much known as the VA guy, because all the things that he talked about on his website were about virtual assistants and hiring help and all this stuff. And it took him a while, but he was able to get out of that, or not necessarily get out of it, but change the perception of who Chris Ducker was. And even though his brand name wasn't Chris Ducker, the VA guy, everything that he touched was about that, similar to how for the longest time, Smart Passive Income was synonymous with Pat Flynn. It still kind of is, but we're now injecting a lot of the team members in there and having it become a whole team like the Avengers now instead of just Iron Man. So it's kind of, you can change the perception or feel of a name over time based on how you do the work in there, right? But if you are a personal brand, having your name be a part of what it is that you're doing, obviously in your domain name or just who you are to hire for whatever it is that you talk about or consult about, etc., can be really great. Because the one thing that I know more than anything is that people want to do business with other people, right? You don't have to use your personal name. It can, in fact, be about the industry that you're into, but having your name on there does help because you're quite unique. And when you insert your face on there, we've talked about personal brands a lot over the weekend when we do these website reviews, etc. It can definitely help you stand out much easier. If you are selling coaching or consulting or anything like that, people love to know who they're learning from. And when you are a brand name and you're putting your personality out there, your vibe will attract your tribe. You're going to collect the right people. And so your brand name may simply just be your name or your character, right? Grandma Goody? Who is Hulk on the team? I would say that's going to be Matt because he's like the smart Hulk. Matt, my CFO and COO, he's like smart Hulk. He's quite strong. He's bigger than I am. And he's like 6'4", and he's super smart. He's somebody who deals with most of the financials and the team operations and all that stuff. And I'm more of just like the talent, if you will, like Iron Man. And I build things. Ajtur Integrare Germania Kuborsa Sebastian. Cool. Thank you so much for the super chat, my friend. Thank you. Your podcast changed my life. Now I have a business that pays the bills and I joined doing this. Just wanted to say thank you for everything you did for me. Thank you so much. I appreciate that for the super chat. Just thank you for the support. Your name, no offense, is something I don't know how to pronounce, but obviously it's in another language, in German, I think. But this allows us to talk about this topic of, well, how easy is it to say something, right? I've come up with names of things before where when I say it out loud, and this is something you should definitely do and repeat over and over again and have other people say, if it's difficult to say, if it's hard to roll off the tongue, then you're going to have to go a different direction. I would highly recommend that. Another thing to consider is when you use numbers. Do we name the number or do we spell it out? I would be aware of that and actually sometimes try to avoid that unless it's kind of obvious when it's like 1, 2, 3, right? Although we do have certain things where we, numbers are hard sometimes, right? Especially when the brand, I've seen this a lot where it's like direct to consumer, but the 2 is an actual 2 in the middle. It's like and that's part of the brand logo and name, but you have to explain that every time, and you don't want to have to. You have the option now, as you are choosing a name, to make it easy. So why not just go through all the options and try to find something that's a little bit more simple and memorable. Now, you might not be satisfied with it right away. I would come up with a list of all the different name ideas that you have, especially from other people who might be able to see things from different angles, etc., and sit on them for a little bit. I wouldn't make a snap decision. I would sleep on it. I would, consider what it might be like to live with this name for a while. But again, the most important thing is going to be really the tagline, especially when it comes to online courses, especially when it comes to books, as well. Now, obviously, for my book Superfans, it's like, well, the whole point of the book was to help you build superfans. So that was just very simple because that's literally what the book was going to be about. My book, Let Go, had sort of a double meaning because I was let go from my architecture job, but in order to get to where I am now as an entrepreneur, I had to let go of who I thought I was supposed to be. I had to let go of these conditions that I had that I was supposed to be an architect because I went to school for 5 years in it and etc. So again, it's just going to take some brainstorming. With courses in particular, I found that many people benefit by literally having sort of a nice name that actually talks about what the outcome is as much as possible, right? So email marketing magic, and again, having to explain that, like, what is the magic? Like, that sounds intriguing. Okay, now they're in and they're reading the tagline. But there's a lot of online courses that specifically talk about what the outcome is and what the purpose is. 1K in 1 day by Nicole Walters is a fantastic name. I think this is the second day in a row we talked about her, in fact. 1K in 1 day. A little bit of rhyming. Sounds like it's alliteration. 1K in 1 day. 1 in 1. And what does this do? This helps you, if you've started your business, get to the point where you can earn $1,000 in 1 day. So she helps business owners learn how to launch something and earn over $1,000 in a day. And of course, she can help people do more than that. But I love the idea of just 1K because that's achievable. In fact, Ramit Sethi has something, or had something very similar called Earn 1K. In fact, Ramit is always a good person to go to in terms of Ramit's courses. Let's see what courses he has. Products and courses. So, of course, his brand name, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, tells you that. Although I have spoken to him about that before, and he's like, I don't know if that's the best name or the name that I would choose if I could do it all over again, right? So I'm just looking at the chat here. Robert has a good point here. I tell people not to use their personal name if there's any chance you want to sell your company in the future. True. If you are going to imagine selling your company in the future, not impossible, but you'd have to do a few things to sell that component of your business. You might have to create a DBA or even a subsidiary business under your brand name that holds the intellectual property and all the things that you would eventually sell off. So you don't have to. In fact, this is exactly what I did kind of with smartpassiveincome.com. I have branched off my personal brand, Flynn Industries LLC, into my own stuff that is going to help and be the place where I sort of have a stepping stool toward a lot of the education work that I want to do quite soon here. And then SPI Media was formed for smartpassiveincome.com. Now, I'm not looking to sell that, but that allows me to separate those things and have a little bit more of a thing that's not all Pat Flynn on smartpassiveincome.com now that the team's coming on board. Like I said, the Avengers. SPI Media now is what houses the courses and all the intellectual property there. So hypothetically, we could sell that off, and I'd still have my own personal stuff at patflynn.com. But because that was branched off, it's a little bit easier. So let's go into some of Ramit's stuff, right? Very, very clear course here. How to find and land your dream job. That's just the name of the course. Enrollment's closed right now. How to find and land your dream job. Develop the deep inner skills of winners in mental mastery. So hit the names of the courses here are on the right-hand side. Find your dream job is the name of the course. What does this course help you do? Obviously, it's in the name. Find your dream job. Here's one that's not quite as simple as, okay, here's the actual outcome of what it is, but this tells you what the course is about. Mental mastery. Develop the deep inner skills of winners. Get the energy and excitement to do what you want, when you want. So this is very clear, but it's in the tagline where it becomes, hey, get the energy, get more excited to do what you want, when you want. Mental mastery. Let's see. How to talk to anybody. Again, very clear. Success triggers. The finisher's formula. This is one where it's very similar to like Power Up Podcasting, right? It's like, here's this thing I'm going to name. But of course, the tagline's going to do all the work, right? The finisher's formula. How to follow through on anything you start. Do you want to know how to pick up any habit, learn any skill, or pursue ambitious projects and know you'll follow through? I know Ramit does so much research when it comes to who his audience is. He knows exactly the problems, the pains, and the things that need to happen in order for his target audience to succeed. And I like this example of the finisher's formula. I love the logo too. It almost looks like an equation, right? Like the Pythagorean's theorem. But the finisher's formula, what does that mean? I have no idea. But when you hear the tagline, you're like, oh, okay. And now it becomes something that you could share, right? Oh, Power Up Podcasting. Oh, the finisher's formula. Have you checked out the finisher's formula? A little bit easier to share that versus something like, hey, have you ever heard of Find Your Dream Job? What do you mean Find Your Dream Job? Oh, that's the name of the course, Find Your Dream Job, versus the the finisher's formula, right? Let's see. This is another one. The overnight resume makeover. Here's one where it's just 50 proven email scripts. So this one's very clear because it is what you know what you're getting. You're getting 50 proven email scripts. Six-figure consulting system. I like this one. A little bit of alliteration. Delegate and done. Stop spending hours every week on tiny, mundane tasks that never really add value to your life. Instead, discover the magic of buying back your time. Get the exact playbook I use with all the systems, tactics, and tricks to save up to 20 hours a week to find and work with a trustworthy assistant. This is copywriting gold right here. So name of the course, Delegate and Done. What an amazing way to frame pushing something off to somebody else and getting it done, right? And then the tagline, or the speaking directly to me, is stop spending hours every week on tiny mundane tasks that really never add value to your life. This is something that we, as people who perhaps are doing a lot of tiny little tasks that don't actually do anything, can relate to. He's speaking to the same language. We've talked about the importance of learning the lyrics of your audience. He's doing that right here. And then what he's selling is buying back time, right? And he gives you specifics, 20 hours a week to find and work with a trustworthy assistant. Behind the sales email, greenlight your idea, breakthrough launch, wealth triggers. So anyway, if you just look up Ramit's courses, you can learn a lot from just the copy that he has there. Do not copy, obviously, but something that I think we should look at for inspiration, for sure. Now, there's going to be instances where when you come up with a name, and unfortunately, it's a great idea, you're stoked on it, and then you do a search, and somebody else has already taken it, right? And in that case, it kind of depends. whether or not you choose to move forward. There are many instances where it just obviously makes sense. If you have a name for a podcast in mind, you look up on, and I highly recommend doing research on the name. Do not avoid doing this, please. And although it can be scary because you put in all this work and effort, you can add modifiers and things to change it up a little bit so that it's not the same, so that you don't actually have to worry about things. Of course, having an attorney or a lawyer or a person who knows the world of trademarks and sort of naming things and what's right, what's not, obviously could be helpful in your corner. And again, I'm just me, and I'm just sharing things based on my own experience. Don't use a trademark in your name, right? Like, let's say you're helping people learn how to use WordPress. Don't name your course, or don't name your. It would be highly advisable not to use a trademark in a domain name, even if you've seen other people do the same thing. There are some rare cases, and actually it's not that rare, but when you could likely get away with using a trademark in the name of your thing because that company's cool with it. Tesla, for example, they would not love it if you started a car company and called it Tesla. But if you started a podcast and called it Podcast or Tesla Daily with Rob Maurer, well, hey, they actually support him and support that. But that's not always the case. I created a business called inthelead.com. Lead stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. I thought that was a cool brand name because it was like lead with the exam, but also you're in the lead. So you want to be ahead, you want to be further. And that was sort of the idea of in the lead. And I got a nice cease and desist letter from the United States Green Building Council, which almost derailed me. This was early on in my business days, and I just was like, oh my gosh, this is not cool. And I thought I was going to get sued and all this other stuff. I just was using the domain name. I just had to change it. And I changed it to Green Exam Academy. But I would worry if you created a business called, WordPress templates on fire. First of all, the on fire thing is overdone because everybody's copying John Lee Dumas. And you have to be wary of and do a little bit of research in your space. How has that word or that combination of words that you're thinking about using, how has that been used before? What might the perception be? But anyway, even if a company is okay with it for now, I would be wary about using a trademark in a domain name because they can always change your mind, and then your entire business is going to be turned upside down, right? So that's happened to me before. Let's see, I'm just looking at some of the comments that are coming in. Are you ready to ignite? That's John Lee Dumas' phrase for sure. Also, check your name in other languages too. Make sure it's A, not offensive, and B, doesn't mean something you don't want it to mean. Is this coming from a experience that you've seen on the sidelines from ConvertKit? ConvertKit, in fact, made a naming snafu where they were going to change their name to Seva, S-E-V-A. And Seva is they were very much set on the meaning behind it, but they didn't understand exactly what it meant because it really had some religious annotations in some Middle Eastern cultures, and it was a sacred word, in fact, and they were now using it for business, and they were so honed in on the fact that it was a 4-letter domain that they got, that they spent some money on, and they were like, okay, well, we're committed now, let's keep moving forward. They could have benefited for sure by sharing this up front, perhaps collecting feedback versus sort of just like revealing it all in one day. And yeah, that was a mistake. And of course, they went back to ConvertKit, and ConvertKit has continued to grow and do extremely well. The logo changed, and the same logo that they had when they came out with Seva is what they have now. And they hired a brand consultancy to help them anyway. It was a whole thing, right? Wow, Seva is my childhood nickname, says Dr. Severin Bryan. Wow, that's crazy. Common sense is a bit cheaper than a lawyer, indeed. So there are obviously a lot of times when we may get it wrong, but if you have, for example, a podcast and there's another podcast literally with the exact same name, it's probably recommended that you don't use the same name. In many cases, it's not actually wrong, or it's not actually illegal or against the rules to do that, because with podcast names, with in fact even book titles, you're totally okay with using the same name. That's unless they trademarked it. There's a lot of gray area. Obviously, number one, you may upset that person and they might just kind of start to mobilize their attorney or lawyer in order to stop you. But in most cases, you'd be totally okay using a name unless they have that trademarked, even if they were first to use it, as far as my understanding. But I wouldn't recommend doing that anyway, because if they've already used that name, they've already built that brand name, that clout. That's only going to make you look bad. It's only going to have you be second in the search engines, most likely, and it's going to confuse the the reason they're going to get upset is because it's good. Number one, you're using the same exact name, and number two, it's going to confuse people. But that's not good for you if people are confused. You want to have something that's a little bit more your own, right? So we'll brainstorm with you in a little bit. I see one idea here from Luke, and I want to just kind of, I just want to help out. Margaret's saying, I honestly don't know why they tried to change. I like their name. I think the idea behind ConvertKit's potential name change was they wanted to reach a much larger audience. ConvertKit sounds very process-based. Converting people is not necessarily what they want to do. They wanted something that encompassed more generosity, more helping other people. They started to change their language in their tagline, helping creators earn more online through email, of course. But that's kind of what encompassed that brand name. And that's why that name Seva worked really well for them. But of course, it didn't work well because of some of the underlying cultural related issues with it that they just were unaware of until they went live, and then everybody started talking about it. So that's kind of where they were coming from with the name change. I remember that I was quite surprised that more people weren't involved in that as it was happening. I wasn't, even as an advisor, to be honest. Casa FTP says, wow, what a beard. I like it, Pat. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for that. Let's see. Other things. What if you come up with a name and... So first of all, there are times when you come up with a name, there is something similar, but it's in a completely different space or industry, right? In which case, well, in many cases, even if it is trademarked, you'd be okay. And again, use common sense, but I have a book called Superfans, right? There's another book called Superfan, but it's a romance novel, and the cover has this dude with his shirt off. And I'm like, okay, I think we're going to be okay here. There's really no confusion. And of course, they're not competing with each other. I'm wondering if anybody's ever searched for my book and seen that. I promise that's not my book either. So there's going to be some cases, for example, when you are coming up with a name for a course, and there may be another course with a similar name. Because money is involved and things are being sold, I would avoid that. You can, again, use modifiers. So, for example, we were going to do webinars that work or webinars that convert for our webinar course that I'm filming this week. But that is, in fact, something that was already done by Amy Porterfield. And I don't want to fight. I respect her, and I don't want to use somebody else's name. Plus, I'm not going to be found in the search engine. She's done it for years and has so much more clout, so I might as well find something else. So we decided to land on A to Z webinars. Again, all the things you need to know about webinars. So that's kind of where we landed there. There might be a case where you come up with a name and it's for a product, but there's a blog with the same name. And this is where it starts to get a little gray, right? Especially if it's within the same space, but it's the blog, and the blog perhaps maybe even hasn't been published on for a while. In most cases, you're likely going to be okay. But again, if you can land on something that is a combination of words that is a little bit more unique, that's always going to be and feel a little safer, and you won't have to worry about it. And then upon first use of this thing, again, like a course or a brand name, that's kind of when you begin to start to own it, even before you trademark it. Although first use will hold up in most cases. Getting a trademark once you know something is more serious, once it's a business, it's actually making money, for example. This is what I did with inthelead.com. I trademarked that, but then that obviously didn't matter anymore because it was using another trademark. So then Green Exam Academy became the thing, and I started my LLC only after I started making money. So let's brainstorm a little bit. That was a lot to take in related to names. Obviously, this simple thing of choosing a name for your thing is quite difficult. And this is, again, a big struggle that a lot of us have. I have it too. And the more people you can get together in a room, the better. The more research that you do, the better. The more that you understand who this is for, the better. the more that you come up with even bad ideas, the better, because you're going to eventually find and even put two bad ideas together to make a good one, right? Putting the benefit in the name can help. Making sure the tagline obviously does the job of picking that up if it doesn't, and going from there. So let's brainstorm a little bit. Let's brainstorm. Yes, on the modifiers, I had a presentation called The Best Gift, but change it to The Very Best Gift to make it into a little book. Cool, I like that. All right. What do you think about A/B testing the product names with Facebook or Google display ads and 2 different landings? I know people like Ramit Sethi and Tim Ferriss do this. If you have an email list already, then it's worth testing. And even I like the idea of, for example, if you are coming up with something, bringing your audience in on the process. I think that helps for marketing if you already have an audience, right? Similar to how I've been talking about how we're filming this webinar course this week. Now you know it exists, whether it makes sense for you or not. Again, you don't know much about it yet, but at least you know it exists, and you can kind of get behind the scenes work at or behind the scenes look at sort of what we're up to. So I can split test with you if I wanted to. Using your own existing list and knowing that that's your target audience already can go a very long way. Plus, it sort of seeds this idea of the thing that you're coming out with. So that's where I would start. But if you don't have that much of an audience yet or a big following, you can use definitely Facebook to at least maybe even create headlines that match the titles of the things you're thinking of, and just seeing which ones people click on the most, right? And that way, that gives you some signals if you are indeed targeting well. But the hesitation I have for that is the idea that, well, now we have to learn how to do Facebook ads. Now we need to make sure we're targeting the right people, or Google AdWords. There's a whole, like that in of itself is a whole new training and course instead of lessons. If you have somebody who can help you manage those ads for you, then it becomes simpler. But it can definitely be another thing to learn and can stunt your growth or take you a little bit longer to do. All right. Samuel, are you okay, dude? Like, there's no other reason you would spam like that unless something was going on in your world that maybe you weren't happy with. I apologize I had to put you in timeout, but you just don't come into communities and start spamming like that. So I hope you're okay. If you want to reach out to me at Pat Flynn on Instagram, I could, just let me know what's going on. I can help you out. I mean, there's no real reason to do that other than maybe you're hurting for some reason. So I'd love to help you out if that's possible. So let's go to Luke. Luke, I think you had a name for something. We could talk about it a little bit. I'd also like to know about trademarking names. Yeah, this is where a trademarking attorney or somebody, and again, you can even check it out yourself, the USTPO, US Trademark and Patents Office, .gov, I think, USTPO.gov, that can be a place where you can go and look up these names too. And of course, you're allowed to use similar names. Like, in fact, there's another company called SwitchPod that does something completely different related to energy. So we're sort of okay. And in fact, there's a lot of cases where there's businesses that we know where there are other businesses with the same name, but they're in completely different industries. And typically that's kind of what happens. Have I done an episode on copywriting, or is that not your domain? In fact, we have a number of copywriting episodes where I've brought guests on, Ray Edwards and my own copywriter, Prerna Malik. And if you want to check out copywriting material on the website, just go to smartpassiveincome.com and look up copywriting. There's a lot of great episodes, and perhaps even some written content too on copywriting. The episodes with Ray is great. I did one recently with Prerna about sales pages. So yeah. Luke says, "You rock, Pat. That thanks so much. The name I'm considering is Stick to Your Goals. I really like it because of how simple and descriptive it is, but I'm not sure if I'm missing something. So Stick to Your Goals, to me, sounds more like a part of a tagline, right? That's the ultimate outcome. That's not necessarily the ultimate outcome, but it's sort of the process, right? It like the finisher's formula is an example of something like this, right? There's a book called Finish by John Acuff, which describes this too. This idea of like helping you stay on track. So I can imagine the sorry, there's a garbage truck taking some trash right now. But it could work. Stick to your goals. But to me, that is more of a tagline, and that's kind of what this course or the name of this course is going to help you do. I can imagine a tagline. Taglines are great with sort of like 3 things, and I can imagine and stick to your goals, or stick to your goals, achieve success, and live the life that you want. Right? That is a tagline, in my opinion. Versus, maybe it's stay on track, or so the idea about helping people stick with their goals. Maybe it's super focus. That's the name of the course. Maybe super focus. Maybe it is. And again, this is where we go. Okay, well, like let's just come up with a bunch of random ideas, right? I think the thesaurus, although hard to say, is a great resource too. For maybe it's maybe the course is called Crossing the Finish Line, right? How to stick to your goals, achieve success, and live the life of your dreams, for example. Doug says the universal rule of 3 still applies for sure. And again, Luke, I think your course name would work out fine the way it is if you'd like. But again, of course, the tagline is important in terms of what is the ultimate outcome of sticking with your goals. I want you to think one step further beyond just, hey, I'm going to help you stick to your goals. It's like, what does that offer you then? Whose concept are we brainstorming? Luke's right now, GTO. There was another one here about, let's see, new skill, new life. I love the alliteration of that one. New skill, new life. I would love a tagline to go along with it. It's going to need a really good tagline, but new skill, new life is to me a great podcast name, course name, whatever the thing you're creating. I like that name. New skill, new life. The idea of thinking of, okay, well, adding a new skill to my life or a new habit, which will change my life in some way. If indeed that's in fact what you are hoping to offer people. I like that name. I don't know exactly what the thing it is that you're creating, but I like that. Again, do more research to find out if somebody's used that name and in what capacity. There's obviously a lot of great suggestions coming in from the chat too for you, Luke, so keep that in mind too. Now, there's a interesting comment here from Scrap Happy as far as a suggestion for Luke, and that is goal glue. Goal glue. To me, that one. And I'm not trying to pick on you, Scrap Happy. I think these kinds of names are great because we need to lay everything out on the table, and it could work. Goal glue. Goal glue. For me, it's kind of hard to say. Goal glue. Goal glue. It almost has a funny noise to go along with it when I say it out loud. Goal glue. Goal glue. Almost like a kind of, you mean Google? No, goal glue. But there. I get what you're saying, like stick to your goals, goal glue. That can work. But at the same time, use your gut if you feel like maybe it's a little bit too, and this is for everybody, obviously, it's going to be really up to you. And share these names with other people too. That's sort of the final lesson here too. Once you have an idea or some ideas in mind, start sharing it with people and just go, hey, what is this? How does this sound to you? We need to have other people tell us because it's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle, as I often say. So playfulness is something that is better for titles of blog posts and videos. And even then, I wouldn't even play around too much in terms of like cleverness. This is a clever title, but it can be too clever in many cases. So I would say it could work, but sometimes we come up with a clever title and we get so caught up in how clever it was that it actually isn't the best name. So just all that to say, just like come up with all the names, clever titles included, but keep in mind that just because it's clever doesn't mean it's going to be necessarily the best one. If that makes sense. Romer says, question, are we only naming courses? How about podcast episode titles? Pivoting in life. I think, yeah, I mean, we're not talking about just courses alone. We're talking about anything, really. Titles for podcast episodes, titles for blog posts, however, are a different take because keywords obviously are an important component of that. The idea of, as a person is scrolling through their feed, what phrases of words can we use to stop them from scrolling further and clicking play or clicking to read, if you will. So I would much rather go with something that perhaps is a little bit more curiosity driven, like, oh my gosh, I have to click on that to learn more, right? Versus that not necessarily being a great strategy for a title of a brand or the podcast itself, for example. Stacy says, question, I'm creating a workbook to help people get clear on their priorities. The working title is The Clarity Guide. I'm thinking I need a really great tagline if I keep the title. I love the title. It tells me what I will achieve with it, but I think you're right. I think a tagline can help you a little bit more define either how this works or exactly what this will unlock for me, perhaps the benefit, right? Yeah, this is really helpful. I'm so bad with naming things. Thank you, Contempo. I'm sorry your garbage was stolen today. It's totally stolen. Clarity is better than cleverness, yes. If we are taking movies, TV, video games, and more, if we are talking movies, TV, video games, and more, would it be lame to add the word memoirs in there somewhere? We used to work at a video store, so we thought that would be cool to add in the name. Memoir, to me, and a great way to test words is to go, what comes to mind when you think of memoir? You know, and I think of somebody who perhaps has written something about their past, or perhaps even somebody who perhaps is deceased, or, you know, what have you. Memories, memory lane. Again, this is kind of the brainstorming process, right? So, you know, for me, memory lane speaks more than memoirs. Plus, memoirs, we also have to consider spelling. Words like memoir might be a little bit difficult for people to spell because there's like that OIR sort of situation at the end. This is why lightning is actually not a great word to use in a brand name quite often, because is it LIGHTNING or ENING? It's just there's very, very common misspellings with these types of things. The focus-driven path. Focused AF. I don't know if we want to use bad words or things that mean bad words, but there's a style for you. I can imagine a Gary Vee course being called Focused AF, right? How about goal getter? Okay, Pat. Yeah. So tomorrow's start time, I just realized that we are at the end of our time here, which is kind of crazy. I didn't realize I would have so much to say about names. Tomorrow we are going to start at the same time. So this entire week essentially is going to be at the 8:30 time. Except for Friday, which will be at 8. So we're going to start at 8:30. Thank you so much. So again, big lessons here. It would behoove you to find other people to do this with, right? Other people around you, perhaps your team, other friends, colleagues, mastermind groups, etc., even family, just to kind of come up with as many different names as possible, as many different words that may relate to what it is you're talking about as possible, because it just might be that one that was random that actually starts an entire conversation and leads to something great. Make sure that you understand when a person hears the name, whether or not it actually denotes what it is that this thing is doing. It doesn't have to, but of course the tagline is just as important as the name, if there is indeed a tagline like for a book or a course or even the brand name, a YouTube channel, a podcast, etc. Right? So it might be fun to continue this tomorrow, in fact, because I think we're all working on new things and we can all continue to brainstorm. And that would be great because then I wouldn't necessarily have to prepare per se a brand new topic, because tomorrow I'm going to be focusing on filming. Tomorrow and Thursday I'm going to be filming my new webinar course, and I need to be really all in on that. And I'm going to be continuing to script out some videos this evening. this is a big week for us with the webinar course that we're filming. So why don't we do names part 2 tomorrow, if that makes sense, and we'll just continue on with helping. We'll do a quick recap of sort of what we're looking for, and then we'll brainstorm together. We'll even dive into some research together just to kind of take it one step further. It's interesting because this is such a tiny thing. It's like, oh, I'm just picking the name, but it's such a hard thing sometimes. So why don't we do that tomorrow? Cool. GTO says, you don't have a conflict with the Wednesday mastermind tomorrow? I would, but I'm going to cancel because tomorrow, again, filming, and I need to have sleep. If I wake up earlier for the income stream, I'll have 1 hour less sleep. I need to be really on my game tomorrow when it comes to filming. So the mastermind knows that I'm going to be canceling, and that I'm going to be really focusing on the coursework, and I can't break the streak. 196, y'all. 196. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for the day today. This was great. Really fun. Apologize I wasn't able to get to more names to help, but we're going to do that tomorrow. So come in tomorrow, and that's going to be at 8:30 a.m. Pacific, same time as today, and we're going to have some fun brainstorming some names for some of you. So make sure you come in if you can. Thanks for all the thumbs up. I appreciate you. Hit that thumbs up again if you haven't already. Please subscribe to the channel. That's going to help you moving forward too. And again, Sunday at 2 a.m. is when episode 200 comes out. We have some special guests, some fun prizes. I'll set up a waiting room for that one fairly soon here so that we can all start hitting that bell notification icon to get recommended for it. So anyway, thank you again so much. I appreciate you. Have an amazing day, and peace out. I'll see you soon.
This is the income stream to help you achieve your dream, all while we keep it clean. This is the income stream. It's the kind of show where you can come and go, but then you leave inspired with no fee required. The income stream with Pat Flynn.
Everybody, keep up the good work. I'm glad that we can continue to stay together throughout these crazy times to help each other out. You help me, I help you. This is what it's about. Appreciate the positive feedback. Appreciate the constructive feedback. And all I ask is have an amazing day. Peace out. I'll see you tomorrow.
Bruh.